You know, we have these three verticals: Annex Ignite, Annex Comprehensive Wealth, and Annex Private Client. And that's where I want to go with this segment. We got a question that came out of a sophisticated investor, and they started to talk about dividends and why they're good and what's happening in the market right now.
It's very timely, mainly because you hadn't noticed Alphabet, also known as Google, right? So it's the parent company of that search engine. They announced that they're going to start paying a dividend. Oftentimes, when you think about a technology company, a company that's in growth mode, they don't necessarily always pay dividends. That used to be one of those indicators of maybe this cash cow kind of a stodgy
but
no
why
growth.
Don't they? You nailed it when you said they were growth companies, right? They're taking some of that free cash flow and investing it back into the company.
That's right, exactly. So it's not a bad thing, right? It's just that they believe that they can invest back in the company for growth, grow that faster than what maybe you can earn as far as if you're spending it and investing it in something else.
Right.
Now, all of a sudden, these growth companies are beginning to pay these dividends. It's not just Alphabet. Meta, so the parent for Facebook, they last quarter announced that they were going to start paying a dividend. One of the big reasons is it's not that they don't have growth opportunities in front of them. It's just that they generate so much cash flow. It's probably better than them trying to reinvest it in marginally attractive projects or maybe wasting it on executive perks, things like that.
Companies have done things before, like buying back their shares to increase that as well.
That's correct. And they actually are still doing these share buybacks. It's just that they have different tax implications. And so I think that it actually shows that these companies are growing up. They're trying to really appeal to a broader investor base. There are a lot of people who really like getting the dividends on a periodic basis. You get the income, and it can also have some tax advantages to it. In today's environment, if you have held that stock for a long enough period of time, it gets taxed at a preferential rate. So instead of having interest income is taxed at, say, your income rate, let's say if you're in the top bracket, that's 37.
Let me just interrupt for a second, because there are different rates, and there are a certain amount of people at certain income levels who pay 0% on that income, right? And then in dividend rate. And then as you move up, it moves up to 15 and 20. And then there's this 3.8% kicker on top of that.
That's right.
But it depends on where you get it. And that is substantially different than taking it as income, because it could be at a much higher rate, maybe 40%. And of course, we read this week that President Biden is talking about a 44% top marginal rate and income tax rate. So it could have substantial benefits.
It can, exactly. And that's one of the things that we always try to do is kind of think through the tax strategizing as far as what kind of income do you want to receive. Is it going to be from a municipal bond, the interest there where it's exempt from federal income taxes? Or is it a CD where it's taxed at the federal and the state level? Or when you're looking at, let's say, with your equities, if you are getting the growth of the principal as far as the value, because the company is doing well, the value is going up, and if you can get some dividends from that, you know, that growth over the long term, it might be taxed at, say, 20 or 23.8% because of the Medicare surcharge for people who are in the top bracket. And then the dividends could also be taxed at that preferential rate.
And Brian, and that's why I always say, know what you own, because sometimes people have come in and said, I saw this other advisor who's trying to sling an annuity at me. And of course, if it's a 5% distribution rate out of an annuity and a 5% dividend out of a stock, you have to know the difference between how you're taxed and what the potentials are.
Those words that you used are very important. Is it a distribution? Is it a dividend? Is it interest? Is it income? Sometimes people just sort of, gloss over what they're actually talking about there, or what's actually meant. But those words really matter, because the distribution that you get, is it going to be considered ordinary income? In which case, it could be taxed at very high rates. Is it going to be considered capital gains? Is it going to be considered qualified dividend? Is it going to be considered, tax-exempt interest?
And you can reinvest those dividends. So the dividends come out, and sometimes people have invested in what's called these DRIP programs.
That's right. Yeah, DRIP is a great acronym. I got introduced to these back when my first stock that I bought, it was with Wisconsin Energy. They had a dividend reinvestment plan, a DRIP plan, where the dividends are automatically reinvested. And believe it or not, over the long term, dividends being reinvested can actually make up about 40%, if not more, of your total return on equities over time.
Again, folks, know what you own, why you own it, and how much you're paying for it.